Hello and welcome to another episode of The Living Philosophy. Today we are talking about dreams and a particular dream that I had a few nights ago. So as I mentioned in the introductory video on the dreaming series, I began working the other day on the first video where I was actually going to analyze a dream. And for some reason, whatever, it didn't work out, or I wasn't happy with the final product, but it had been a while since I'd been actively working on dreams. I go through phases where I work on them like every day, and you get this kind of beautiful feedback loop going on where you're interpreting dreams and they're answering, and you're seeing themes emerge and you're connecting them to things in your life, and then you're seeing those themes re-emerge and transform, and so you can see the dream mirror of life unfolding, and it's a really exciting kind of process. It's you can definitely live your life by your dreams, and that's really it's really quite exciting. And so after that aborted dream session, I went to bed that night, and I woke up the next morning startled with a dream. It was it's amazing, like when you reach out, when you offer out a hand, when you take a step in that direction with dreams. I've often found this, that they respond strongly. And I don't know what that is, because I still don't really know. I'm not convinced about any theory about what dreams are on any kind of level, except that I am convinced that they are more than a brain fart. And I'll probably cover other videos on the philosophy of dreaming in that sense. But it was just that I took that step towards, okay, I'm going to work on dream. I'm going to analyze this dream, and then it was like the dreams were like, oh well, here's one you can work on, and it gave me a strong thing. And there is a theme in psychoanalysis and in Jungian psychology where someone can say that they don't dream, but then the night before they go to a therapist, or in anticipation of that, they will have a very powerful evocative dream, as if the psyche is generating something for, like, here's what to work on, saying to the therapist. And it's that kind of like feedback system with the dreams. And so I experienced that the other night, and it was a really interesting dream. So I thought I would share that with you today. And the dream was quite simple. I was living in the apartment that I lived in when I was in Scotland. So I studied over in Aberdeen in Scotland, and I was living in that apartment, and it was a very big bedroom that I had back then, and had giant wardrobe doors, and it was it was a big room, spacious room, really really cool room. Loved that room. And in this dream, then I slide those doors open, and I noticed that actually the size of the room with it, the size of the wardrobe, was like a room in itself. It was quite large. It was about 10 feet by maybe 4 feet deep, and it was sizable, and probably closer to 15 feet long actually. But anyway, so there was this sliding door right in front of me when I opened it, and I was like, I never knew there was another door here. So I opened that up, and there's like this sitting room in there with like a PS5 connected, and this really really cozy, really like inviting kind of sitting room. And it's just a small little box room, but there's no doors on the other side of it, so it's like there'd be a double door, but there was no doors, and so it just kind of opens out into another room, which is very similar to my bedroom, except it's laid out like a study. And so I go into this room, and I go down to the end, and there's a couple of tables, and there's a beautiful mahogany table, and there's like a bay window, and I'm like, I'll turn these into shelves, and I'm going to make this like my study. This is going to be like my place of work. So it was like finding this beautiful office space that had a view of like a city over it. And yeah, so it was just, this was going to be my working place. And I was really excited about it. And I was like, how have I never found this room? So it was like I'd been living in that apartment all the time. And I was like, how have I never found this room? So that was really cool. And there's a shift then in the dream, and it's like I've gone back in. It's like I've left and I've come back, and I'm exploring around more, and I go and I look beyond the next door. So there's a door at the end of the room over on the right hand side before the bay window, and I go through, and I see the corridors, and I'm kind of looking around, and I'm like, oh shit, this is someone else's apartment. And I can see the front door that leads out, and it must loop back around in the apartment. So I was like, oh no. Because what was going on in my mind was that someone had rented both apartments and they'd demolished this wall between, or they created a way to connect the two halves to make one larger apartment. And so I was a bit like freaked out. I was a bit like, oh, this is someone else's space. I feel like a little bit like I'm imposing here, or, you know, I don't know if someone's going to come in and catch us kind of thing. And then there's another switch, and it's like I'm telling my old flatmate at the time, and I'm telling him, oh, you know, so he's still a good friend of mine, and I was telling him, oh, you know, yeah, about this room, and I was like, oh, but I know, you know, we should be careful about going in there. And he's like, he doesn't really listen to that, and he just kind of he goes right in, and he goes off, and it's different form now. So where the bay window was, he's kind of gone off into a city, and there's, you know, it's like traffic's like a buzzing kind of city, like in New York, and I'm like, oh shit, we gotta get out of here. Like, so I'm heading back towards the door, and I'm freaked out about people getting through. So it's kind of like a Resident Evil underworld, I guess. It's like it's a different world, and I have this fear of people making it back, like crossing the threshold, as if that's a crossing of another world. So that really freaked me out. And so I'm moving back towards the door into the apartment, and I'm saying to my friend, come on, quick, because there's other people, it seems like, are coming rushing towards it. And so I move back towards the apartment, and I'm not sure if he's going to make it, and I just I'm slamming the door, but this person just makes it through. And then the door slams behind, and then I wake up, and a bang! And the girl that made it through was this beautiful girl we used to go to school with, me and the lads, and in secondary school. So she just made it through, and it was this thing of like, oh shit, what does this mean? And that's when I woke up, and I was like filled with fear, you know. It was like something had crossed over, and that was kind of like, it felt like this is dangerous kind of thing. So yeah, that was the whole dream, and it was really exciting. There's so much in there to unpack. So I guess the most powerful symbols is there's this other room, there's this unknown, there's this whole other living space that's there that I didn't know was there as part of my living space. So it's this whole beautiful other place. And then there is the realization in the revisit the second and third time that there's other people here, that this is someone else's space, that this isn't just like a gift to me. And there's kind of an uneasiness, like maybe I shouldn't use this space because, you know, there's other people around. Or maybe this is someone's room. So there was that, and then there's the girl. So those would be like the three most powerful symbols for me that came out of that dream. Something that came to my mind with this was of a dream that Carl Jung had, and this was I think it was when Jung discovered alchemy, and this was around the late 19s or the 20s. And for Jung, the discovery of alchemy was such a reinforcement of everything that he'd discovered and the journey that he'd gone on. So during like the years of World War One, Jung, and a little bit before, Jung had a major psychotic kind of breakdown, except it was a very strange one because he was like functional. So he'd go through his day and he'd be able to see his patients and spend time with his family, and he said he'd go up after dinner to his study, and sometimes his knuckles would be gripping the table white, and he was having very vivid conversation. He says sometimes he'd sit down to write his active imagination, where he's having conversations with the unconscious, and he'd feel the floor fall from under him, and he's fallen into this deep world and having adventures there, and revelations coming to him. There's one incident where the room is filled with the dead, and it's him recording what the dead want him to say. So really strong psychotic thing. But later on, anyway, he has this powerful dream which reinforces, kind of gives a cultural precedent to his own philosophy / psychology that evolved. And it's about he wakes up, or he's in this dream, and he is exploring. He's in his house and he's exploring, and he realizes there's this whole other annex to his house, and there's this whole other room, and in that room there are all these like ancient books, and it's like a new study. It's a beautiful really interesting, fascinating world. And he's like, how did I not know about this before? And that was the dream. And his take on it is, so the psyche, so a house in a dream is generally symbolical of the mind. So you can think of different rooms having different implications for psychology. So let's say the attic is the place where you keep your stored away memories, things that you haven't discarded but are kind of there in the back of your head but aren't necessarily part of your day-to-day life. So you can think about that like that. Obviously that has a clear map over with the attic in real life, where we keep our Christmas decorations or the bits and bobs that we don't need right now. And so that's kind of what that symbolizes. And you can have the bedroom symbolizing like intimate things, the bathroom, the dealing with negative emotions and the processing of our emotions, and then the kitchen as the place of where we're getting our energy from. So all of these can have different implications in dreams, but the house as a whole is our psyche as a whole. And so to discover a new room and like in Jung's dream, an annex was to discover a whole new part of himself, was to discover a whole part of his mind that he didn't know was there before. And that's why, I guess, maybe why I found this dream so exciting, was that, oh wow, there's this might be the discovery of some part of my mind that I just didn't know about before. And I'm not quite sure what that is. Maybe that'll take some time. The stream is only a couple of nights old, but might take some time to see what that is. Now, I can imagine it's probably connected in with this whole YouTube thing that I'm doing. So this I'm doing 100 videos in 100 days to learn everything that I can in a kind of a sprint, in a programming kind of sense of learning everything about YouTube. But it's much more personal than that for me, because it's the channeling of my philosophy. It's getting out my thoughts in a kind of a 7-minute aphorism. And so it's a very creative soul process for me, this, while also being that other kind of like really down to earth. You have to be realistic about marketing and editing and creation, and it's got a bit of an artistic flair as well. So it's a beautiful combination of events. And I'm wondering, when I go into this room, there's the PS5 little sitting room, and then there is the new study with the beautiful mahogany table. And so it's a workspace while also being a relaxing space. And I guess for me that's the different sides of the creation process as well. There's the beautiful process of editing, and there's the coming up with the ideas, the communicating them. So the editing process is quite fun, and like I guess I can map that over with the PS5 little cozy room. Sometimes you just get so immersed in learning about a new editing technique, and I could improve that, or I can improve this. So I can see maybe a map over with that. But then this is where it gets interesting, I think, is when I visit the place for the second time, and it's no longer just my space. And that's a fascinating thought. And I wonder to connect that with the dream. Okay, but what do we mean? It's another's space. Well, to reference that video that I did on the structure of the self. So the ego being the center of the tip of the iceberg, but the majority of the iceberg, the majority of the mind, of the psyche being underwater, which is to say, to being under the waterline of consciousness. So most of us is unconscious. Most of our beliefs, our values, even the physiological things of like breathing, heart rate, thickness of the vascular system, and the allocation of glucose. There's such a massive manifold working of an organism within us, and that is the great unconscious that's underwater. And the whole thing of Jungian psychology, and what Jung believes is going on with the dreams, is the reminding that you are not the center of yourself. So the ego is just the center of the part of the iceberg that is above water, but the center of you as a whole, as a subject, you not as just as your ego, but as who you are as an entirety. I think it was Emerson that said, "Your actions speak so loud that I can't hear what you're saying." And it's that thing of who we are as a whole is more than just our ego, our thoughts, that little part of ourselves. It's the entirety of our being. And so the purpose of dreams, and he also says it's about synchronicities, which I cover in a video on synchronicity, that it's about what the center of the entirety of your being is, and synchronicities and dreams remind you that the ego is not the center. And it's the whole thing with like that Jung realized with the individuation process is the correct relationship of the ego to the self. So Jung wasn't like the theosophists of the kind of New Age and the Eastern kind of schools of thought, which believed that the ego was a no-no and needed to be dissolved. Jung believed that you needed to form the correct relationship between ego and self. And that is the relationship of, we'll say, heliocentric rather than terrestrial centric. That to realize that you're not the center of the self, and the correct relationship is to orbit the sun in harmony, and to realize that you're an inferior thing, not necessarily inferior in a pejorative sense, but inferior. There's this superior thing which you are resorting and orbiting around. And so that is the other half of ourselves. And yeah, so with this dream, I was thinking, oh, there's this whole other room there. There's this whole other beautiful space. And when I go back, I realize this is someone else's place, or this could be someone else's place. And I go and I look through the door, and I see the front door, and I see the corridor, and I realize this is someone else's apartment, and I'm really afraid that I'm like intruding, or that I'm going to get caught, and it's like breaking in. And so I feel, okay, well, how do we think about that? And the way one thought I have is this is the world of the unconscious. And when I made that first video about dreams, I entered into a new space, and I have to be respectful of the actual owner of that space. And it's a beautiful space, it's an inviting space, but it actually might be connected to something greater. That this is, perhaps that this... So this is where it kind of gets confusing. Is it to say that this YouTube work that I'm doing, because it's like soulful work, that it's on the other side, that this is something, it's operating in the realm of the soul? But what about so we could say that, okay, the dream shift, could that be me working on the dream? So this could be the realization that actually this is part of a higher purpose, that this work is in the other side. It's on the other side, which is to say that it's soulful in the sense of it's not just ego work. It's not the work within the realm that I've known. It's by entering into dreams, it's entering into the other side. It's like a spiritual work, I guess. I'm butchering the interpretation of this, because I'm kind of circling this idea, trying to find the right expression of it. But yeah, do you know what? I'm like, it's very hard. There's a few things there. I know that it's in the other realm. I can kind of connect it with my workflow, but then there's this idea of the other presence, and that certainly makes me think of the unconscious. That makes me think of that's the presence I'm feeling on the other side there. So let's come back to, I go there a third time, and this time I'm really worried about getting caught, and my friend goes way off into this space, and then he comes back, and I'm really afraid about something crossing the threshold, about something making it through. And yeah, so I guess that's a fear of something coming back into my world, into my ego world. Okay, that's really interesting. So I've a fear of something crossing back over the threshold, because there's something final about that. It's almost like a horror movie in some sense, like Freddy Krueger coming back through a dream, you know. And so I'm worried about something. Maybe it's a fear of actual genuine transformation, or fear of what I'm doing here crossing into my real life. Because other than like my close friends, or the people that I've actually talked to in the last month or two that I've been making these videos, I haven't actually talked to anyone in my own. I haven't shared this on my own Facebook, or because in some way I feel like that's not what I'm doing it for. I'm not doing it for like social currency. I'm doing it to start creating my own platform, to actually start living that philosophy, to start embodying my philosophy in the world, and start to kind of shape it up. So I guess I'm doing it for those kind of soulful reasons, rather than to kind of, and long term, obviously business reasons. I'd love to make a success out of this, and to reach a lot of people. So there's those aspects, but it's not about like personal status within my network. So I guess I haven't shared it with them. But then is that a protection mechanism, maybe, that I'm afraid of something crossing back into my real life? I'm afraid of something actually coming out of this. And for me to talk about dreams, there's another thing that I'll connect here, that I've been not afraid. So there's like with YouTube, you have to think about niche. You have to think about like all these business things of like, does this belong, and audience and all those kind of things. And yeah, this is the real earthy side of it. And yeah, I guess it's just the fear of those things mixing, maybe, that's kind of got me. So yeah, that's an interesting thought, that I'm afraid of something crossing back into my real life. By working on dreams, I'm actually putting something, it's more vulnerable out there, because this is not me recording the thoughts of some thinker that died long ago. It isn't even me just coming up with a philosophical thought on the zeitgeist. This is my soul that I'm bearing in some way, in the form of an online sharing of my dreams and getting into the dream world. And dreams are inherently personal. You can, because you don't understand them, you might be revealing more about yourself than you know. And so that's something that's going on there. I guess that's the fear, maybe, of something crossing back over the threshold. But I see that it's this beautiful woman that crosses back over. That's the strange thing at the end, is that something has crossed back over. The door is shut. I just shut the door, but she gets through before the door is shut. And maybe that's exactly what's going on here. Is that dream was the thing crossing the threshold. Was it managed to, it cut past the skin. Because when I made that video, I failed to get to the end of it. I failed to finish that video because I felt it got too vague or something, and I wasn't sure then if I would do dreams. I kind of said, maybe it's not suitable for the channel, maybe I'll do another channel. But I decided, once I had this dream, that I was like, okay, no, let's just do it. Let's just start talking about dreams, because I do love them. It does tie in with the Jungian psychology. So maybe the dream is the Trojan horse here, that she is the thing that has crossed over, and it's the feeling of like that exciting dream that's like, whoa, I'm going to talk about dreams. So it could be that. And again, these are just provisional thoughts. That's all you can really have with dreams, unless you spend an awful lot of time on them. But it was a fascinating dream. It was a powerful emotional dream, that often, that means enough in itself. But why fear? I guess fear of what could come of it. And yeah, so I think that's probably long enough. I hope I haven't bored you by sharing my own dreams. People hating to hear about other people's dreams. But yeah, I hope you got something out of it. And I'm going to continue to do this and to see what emerges from it. I think I love talking about dreams anyway, so it is something I would love to find like minds in that sense. So vulnerable though it is, I think it is a worthwhile endeavour for me to begin. So I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a different flavour of episode. I can feel as I've been making it, different flavour of episode to normal. If you have enjoyed it, please subscribe if you haven't already. And otherwise, I shall see you next time. Thanks for watching. Just thought I'd add a little addendum to the dream, and I've been thinking about it the last few days more and chatting to people about it. So just thought I'd add a little bit more before I upload it. So I was chatting to my brother, and he was saying about Narnia. It's very interesting because it's this world that's at the back of the wardrobe, and that's a really interesting, powerful idea. It's what is Narnia? What is the symbolism of Narnia? And it's this entire world that's beyond. Like the wardrobe is kind of it's such an everyday kind of thing. It's where your everyday clothes are in there, and it's just part of your daily routine to open that up. And yet within that is a whole universe, a whole potential for transformation. And maybe there's something in the fact that clothes are the way you look to the world. So maybe it's something that changes how you appear to the world, or something along those lines. But I just thought that was interesting, that it's this universe that exists in the back of the wardrobe. And Narnia is, of course, this fantastical kind of world. It's it's magical, and it's a place of heroic transformation for Lucy and the Pensieve siblings. So yeah, I just thought that would be an interesting thing to add on to the end of the dream there. So yeah, just what does it tell us? I guess just that the land beyond the wardrobe is something magical, something a place of transformation, again, a place of the unconscious and the archetypal forces. So yeah, I would like to, I must think more about this idea of why Narnia is in a wardrobe, because it's something fascinating in that it's almost a direct map over of that symbol. So very interesting. But I thought I'd just share that before I upload. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.